Have you ever just stared at a work email and thought, what do they actually want from me? Yeah, you're not alone. In today's Explainer, we are going to demystify office communication. We're turning those dry, confusing memos and notices into your secret weapon for actually getting things done. So, let's jump right in.
So, here's our game plan. First up, we're going to figure out why so many office messages just completely fall flat. Then, we'll get into the toolbox and explain the huge difference between a memo and a notice. After that, we'll walk through the blueprint for a perfect memo, then do the same for a notice. And we'll finish up with some pro tips to make your writing really stand out.
Okay, let's get right to it. Why does it feel like so much of our communication at work just misses the mark? You know, we've all seen that one vague email that sends the entire team into a spin, trying to figure out what's going on. That's not just annoying, it's a total productivity killer.
I mean, think about it. That cryptic email about a policy update that gives you zero details. Or that classic handwritten out-of-order sign taped to the coffee machine with no explanation. It's something we've all experienced, and it's a perfect example of communication completely breaking down.
In this case study, it's the classic. A manager just slaps up a notice about repairs. That's it. Suddenly nobody knows which floor is affected, how long it'll last, and the office basically descends into chaos. Instead of informing people, they've just created a massive headache. This is exactly the kind of mess we're here to clean up.
So, how do we dodge these communication disasters? Well, it really just starts with choosing the right tool for the job. I mean, you wouldn't use a hammer to turn a screw, right? So you shouldn't send out a company-wide memo when a simple notice on the door would do. Let's break down the difference.
First up, the memo. Short for memorandum. Think of this as a targeted internal document. Its whole job is to get detailed info, like a big policy change or a project update, to a very specific group of people inside the company.
And then you've got the notice. This thing is meant for public consumption. Its audience is way broader. Pretty much everyone in the building, maybe even visitors. It's for quick, can't-miss info, like, hey, the water's off tomorrow, or don't forget the company picnic. So to put it simply, a memo is like a detailed email to just the marketing team about a new campaign strategy. A notice is the sign on the front door announcing a fire drill for the entire building. Getting this right is honestly the most important first step toward communicating clearly. Okay, so you've decided a memo is the way to go. Fantastic! Now, how do you make sure it's actually a great one and not just another email people ignore? The good news is there's a super simple, really effective blueprint you can follow every single time. Here are the 5 key parts. You start with the header. That sets the context. Then, the opening. Get straight to the point, no fluff. The body is where you fill in the necessary details. Now, the action section is absolutely crucial. This is where you tell people what they need to do. And finally, the closing just wraps it all up nice and neat. For example, let's look at that memo about the new remote work policy. It had a clear subject line, it stated the new policy right up front, and it gave specific step-by-step instructions. See? It's a perfect example of that 5-step blueprint in action, and it leaves absolutely no room for confusion. All right, let's switch gears and talk about our other key tool. How do you create a notice that people actually read and understand, instead of just, walking right past it? Well, the structure for a notice is even simpler because it has to be understood in a single glance. You need a big, bold title, like Notice or Alert, the date it was posted, the core message, and you've got to keep it incredibly simple. And, this is critical, who to contact if they have questions. Hey, remember that super vague repairs notice from the beginning? Now compare it to this effective one about the AC maintenance. It had a bold title, it spelled out the exact floors, dates, and times, and it provided a contact number. It literally answered every question before anyone could even ask it. That's the goal. So now you have the blueprints for both memos and notices. Awesome. In this last section, we're going to cover the principles that apply to all professional writing. These are the tips that'll take your skills from good to great. Look, here's the bottom line. Keep it clear and concise. Seriously, ditch the corporate jargon nobody understands. Be specific. Instead of saying soon, say this Friday at 3 p.m. Use bold text and bullet points to make your message easy to scan. And please, for the love of all that is holy, respect everyone's time by only sending it to the people who actually need to see it. And hey, this isn't just a nice idea. It's backed by data. Clear communication leads to happier, more engaged employees. And that makes total sense, right? When things are clear, there's less anxiety, less mental clutter, and people can just focus on their actual jobs instead of trying to decode your message. On the flip side, unclear communication is just a one-way ticket to lost productivity. Getting this right is a huge win for everyone.
Of course, the tools we use are always changing. Email and company intranets are still the big players, but platforms like Slack and Teams are catching up fast. But here's the thing. The core principles of being clear and direct, they stay exactly the same, even if the delivery is shifting from a printed memo to an instant message.
So, at the end of the day, the biggest takeaway here is that structure and clarity are your best friends in the workplace. Doesn't matter if you're writing a memo, a notice, or just a quick message on Slack, these principles will make you a much more effective communicator. Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. As this technology keeps evolving, will the next perfectly written memo you get be drafted by a person or by an AI?